Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I hope everyone is doing okay. Guys, if you enjoy the content, you can always support the content through PayPal or Patreon. Streamlabs also works now. So yeah, let's get to content. So Tony Blair, I cannot believe that Tony Blair is not prosecuted. For that matter, I can't believe George Bush hasn't been prosecuted. But these people are still walking the earth, despite the fact that they've caused all sorts of havoc and hell for others in other places. When I went to, I think it was Egypt, and you're in one of the countries, there's a transference. It's not just there's somebody that's being killed somewhere else. It's the person who's being killed may be very much like the person who was in my cab, the person who served me my drink, the person who served me my sandwich, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It makes it real. It makes it more visceral. The fact that you've evaporated 1 million people off the planet, it makes it more real. Tony Blair, however, after being the guy that essentially joined George Bush, now has an idea on how to fix the stuff. Take a listen to this, though. I want to read this first before I go into the other part, because this gives context to what I'm about to read that Tony Blair is now saying. This is Sarah Helm. Sarah Helm was the husband to essentially, 1 second, I'm bad at doing two things at once. Where is she? Here we are. Sarah Helm was the wife of Jonathan Powell, who was the Prime Minister's chief of staff. She effectively lived with the man who lived with the Prime Minister. That's what it boils down to. So, let's see. There we are. Right here. She wrote a play. Now the play is called Loyalty, I believe. Yeah, the play is called Loyalty. And in the play, she gives a blurb of a conversation that she overheard between George Bush and Tony Blair. This is going to annoy you greatly, but apparently it's true. In early March 2003, on the eve of the Iraq War, I overheard a crackly transatlantic phone call as George Bush spoke to Tony Blair. The United States president told the Prime Minister he was ready to kick ass. Blair laughed nervously and talked of his epitaph. Bush urged the junior partner to have some cojones, some balls. Let's have some balls. Let's go kill 1 million people. Yes, let's do that. If anybody else on the planet killed 1 million people, that person would have been dragged before the Hague. And the idea that not only did they kill 1 million people, not only did they completely destabilize that region of the world, not only have they been taken down one nation after the next, that even supersedes presidents, because Obama and Trump have tended to the same playbook. Even when it looks like Trump doesn't necessarily want to do it, Trump is still playing to the same playbook. Let's kick some ass. These men are responsible for untold torture and mayhem. And they are walking the earth. And they come up later and say, hey, I know I caused all of this stuff. I know I caused millions of lives to be killed and extinguished. I know I caused all sorts of people misery as they flee everything that they've ever known to leave places where they won't get murdered. I know I've been responsible for all of that. But hey, I have a plan to fix it. Tony Blair, you should totally listen to me now. Listen to this right here. She says, I wrote some of this conversation in a play called Loyalty. At the time, my partner, now husband, Jonathan Powell, had been the Prime Minister's chief of staff. That the play, which was staged in London to 2011, was partly about how the main players had behaved towards each other and what I heard them say. Some suggested itself was disloyal to have revealed such things. but the Chilcot, chairman of the Iraq Inquiry, whose report is published this week, didn't think so. Now, the Brits, at the very least, investigated Tony Blair and found him to some degree liable that he overplayed his hand in regards to the information. I think Tony Blair said they were ready to launch. It was almost like imminent. Something insane. He was saying insane things in order to get that vote that allowed him to prosecute this war. That's right here. An American military voice. Mr. Prime Minister, we have the President of the United States for you. There's a long pause. Time lag. Bush seems very far away. Blair, very close. Almost in the bedroom. Hello? Hello? Hi, how are you? I can't do a British accent, I'm sorry. I'm fine. But hey, the most important, how are you? You're being so courageous. Really, really brave. Your body language. Truly, I watched you on TV. Terrific. Real leadership will be remembered. Believe me. God, he's an idiot. God, he's an idiot. Blair, yeah. Well, it's hard sometimes. Believe me. But you're doing pretty well yourself. What, me? I'm just ready to kick some ass. Blair laughs nervously. After more mutual admiration, particular of each other's body language, Blair tries to make his move, raising the question of the French. Jacques Chirac, the French president, is causing trouble, opposing the second resolution, he says. Yeah, but what did the French ever do to anyone? What wars did they win since the French Revolution? I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. If it was a French Revolution, how? There's no way to win that. Either side that wins it, it's French. What war is it? All right, let's keep going. Yeah, right. More bad jokes about the French. Then the Prime Minister tries again. So, where do we go from here? I'd like to do a second resolution Friday. We need to do more closure and call in the chips with Chile, Mexico, close it down. Now, the part that's wild here, Blair is doing his best to try to get Bush to wait. Because to some degree, it makes it worse for Blair. Because Blair didn't want to do this. At the very least, Blair acknowledged that this was going to be a fuckfest. He knew it going into it. This is what I mean. Tony Blair, whatever you want to think of him and what scorn you may want to heap on him, is not a stupid man. And because he's not a stupid man, it makes it worse. George Bush is a fucking idiot. He may be the dumbest man alive. If he has an IQ that measures above the level of a goldfish, I would be astonished. So him saying, I'm going to kick some ass, I understand he thinks of this stuff in comic book terms. Tony Blair knows better. It makes it worse. Tony Blair knows better. Let's keep going. Yeah, well, let me explain how I see it. I want to call the Europeans. I want to take the Europeans with me early Friday. Friday. It might be a little early. Long silence. Talking in the background of the Oval Office. A moment later, I heard Bush take up the phone again and suddenly switch subjects, talking with Vladimir Putin. Both men then sneered at Hans Blix, the UN weapons inspector, who had found no evidence of chemical weapons. Think about that. The guy who went to look, to inspect, comes back and says, we don't find any evidence of chemical weapons. Bush ignores the fact that this guy found no evidence of chemical weapons and say, well, I have intelligence that says otherwise. Bush calls Blix that no count, then speaks of new intelligence about weapons of mass destruction that Saddam is about to offload. Who gives a shit about that scientist going to figure out whether or not there's been chemical weapons? I know better that there are chemical weapons. I'm George Bush. I know things. Bush, and you know what? We could put a bug in on this and make sure Chirac gets to hear it. That you That you show him. And when that son of a bitch hits Europe, they'll be saying, where were George and Tony? Laughter in the background, in the back of the bedroom. We're both silently willing Blair to try again. He takes a new tack. Blair is continuously trying to get Bush to wait. Again, Blair knows better. That makes it worse. I'm sorry, I think that makes it worse. Blair knows better. Bush is a fucking idiot. Blair knows better. When my dog does something, and we come in and we look at him, and he's looking down, and he's like, and you're like, you knew better. Otherwise, you wouldn't be looking this way. It's the moments where he's jumping up and happy, and everything else was like, oh man, you don't even know. So I can't. It's like, how can I be mad at you? Blair knows better. So let's see, right here. I wanted to go to the point where they ended. All right. It is evident by now that Blair's attempt to get through to Bush on the timing of the new resolution, and hence the war, has failed. And he knows it. But before he hangs up, Bush feels the need to once again bolster Tony Blair. But you know, Tony, the American people will never forget what you're doing. And people say to me, you know, is Blair, Prime Minister Blair, really with you all the way? Do you have faith in him? And I say yes, because I recognize leadership when I see it, and true courage. And it won't let us down. At this, Blair laughs again, seeming unsure how to respond. Well, it might be my epitaph. Like, R.I.P., here lies a man of courage, you mean? Yeah, right. Blair then makes a final plea to Bush, this time for words on Israel-Palestinian peace, which he always hoped would be a payoff for the war. Oh, God! Are you serious? Are you serious? But Bush is impatient now to go now. Yeah, Bush is done. I've gotten what I needed from you. You've said you're sign on your public, your people of Britain, to go to a country that did nothing to you, to murder and get murdered for a lie. That's what your prime minister did. When I say he needs to be in a prison, he needs to be in a prison. How many people died because of Tony Blair? How many people died because of Tony Blair's association with Bush? And if Blair knew better, doesn't that make it worse? Doesn't that make it worse? Right here. Blair then makes a final plea to Bush. Bush is impatient to go now. With the image of Blair's epitaph hanging in the air, the call comes to an end. I have to go hop off to Texas, but hang on in there. And cojones. Cojones. A million people died, man. I honestly can't fathom that. I can't fathom it. I can't process it. And then it's an odd feeling of culpability that you're part of the country that did it. So Blair has a new answer to this. Blair has an answer. Well, and first, before I go to Blair has an answer, I want to thank whoever gave, because I don't want to forget these. Michael Mike, the Russian bot, will you be having a special Aliens Arrive show on Thursday? God, I would love to have a special Aliens Arrive show on Thursday. You have no idea. I love doing shows like that. So right here. So this is Tony Blair explaining how to stop terrorism. Blair has answers. Tony Blair calls for greater focus on prevention strategy to fight terrorism. Hey, you know what? You know how you prevent terrorism, Tony? I'll give you my own personal experience, something that you probably have never heard of. I'm in Kenya. I'm in Nairobi. I've had an awesome reporting experience today where I've been able to go and talk to multiple people here about the political climate of Nairobi. One of the things that I didn't know was that the United States recruits in Nairobi. The reason that the United States does this is because it's a poor country, and because it's a poor country, the dollars go a bit further. Now, the wild part about this is, in the United States, you can give a bit of propaganda to get people to realize or think that they're doing something for good ends. So the person who's sitting in a weapons factory who does a job where he's building bombs and jets and planes and things that are going to bomb and kill and murder other people, he can comfort himself in this idea that I'm doing this to fight terrorism for America. Now, the reality of it is less about that and more about, I just need a job. I just need a job. The person who's in Kenya doesn't have that. He knows. He's not unclear about the situation. He knows. Everybody I've talked to today knows. They understand what the United States is doing around the world. Even when they're not politically astute, they know. What you don't understand is that you have a large number of Muslims who hate your guts. And they hate your guts not for wrong things, but for right things. Meaning the things that they hate you for is completely justified. They're justified in their hatred. The Kenyan that they hire here will go out and do very bad things. The person that they hire here knows that they're going to do bad things, and they know they're going to do bad things for America because they're getting the paycheck. If you think to what people, even in this country, a large number of those people join the military because of a paycheck, not necessarily because of patriotism or patriotic reasons. The point I'm getting at here, that Kenyan that goes out and does bad things, you understand that people know that that's attributable to us. The rest of the world is not in the dark about this. Only America. Only America. The hundreds of billions of dollars that you spend on fighting terrorism, buy houses, buy roads, buy companies, buy shit that gets people out of shit and piss conditions. You're trying to fight terrorism at the other end where they're already in shit and piss conditions. And when they say we don't like being in shit and piss conditions, and fact is, do you honestly believe that anybody wants to be a terrorist? Think about that. Think about what I'm asking you here. Do you honestly believe that somebody wakes up in the morning and says, yes, it's a great day to be a terrorist. This is what I want to do. This is the greatest thing on the planet. Or is it they're living in shit and piss conditions and their life is so miserable that this to them is some degree of a way out or a way to push? Yes, it may be coded in religious terms, but let's be very clear. I have a hard time believing that people want to be this way. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. What I will believe, if it's people living in horrible conditions, then it's a little bit easier to pick up X, to kill Y. To kill Y. I don't completely decapitate this idea that people are motivated by religious things sometimes. Of course, there's going to be people across any, I guess you could say spectrum. There's going to be a section of people who are, some percentage, that fall into a particular ideology that goes beyond this thing of conditions, environment. But let's be clear. That's not the majority. That's not the majority. That money will be better suited as opposed to bombs and jets and planes and things that maim and kill and everything else. Because the fact is, you can never be safe. There's no such thing as safety in the context of having other people want to kill you. They will, probabilistically at some point, get you. Meaning, at some point, you will get got just based on probability alone. There is no such thing as safety unless everybody is safe. And the fact is, these bombs and jets and planes and everything else, all these billions of dollars, think of all of this money that's being spent on this. That if used in a different way, maybe stops them from hating your guts in the first place. Maybe if you weren't paying Kenyans to go to places doing bad things in the name of America, those people wouldn't necessarily hate America that much. Maybe if you didn't sign up to a war where you've slaughtered millions of people, let alone sending huge numbers of refugees fleeing into other countries, into horrible, repugnant fucking conditions, let alone what the soldiers themselves were doing to the people who were there, terrorizing the people of that country. Innocent, by the way. Fucking innocent. But Tony Blair, he's the guy with the answers now. He's the guy with the answers. Tony Blair needs to be in a jail cell. That's what I think. And I would honestly imagine that's what a lot of people on this particular page thinks. Let's see. Who was that? Huh. At least I thought it was somebody. All right, guys. It's 3 in the morning here, so I'm going to turn in. But if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And of course, you can always support through Patreon. And I gotta be honest, even if it's just $1, it all helps. Thanks, guys.